Hi, Don.
Hey, Jen.
So I am very happy to have you here, Don. I know you've been with us before in many different capacities with Fab. And for those of you who I haven't met, I'm Dr. Jen. I'm the founder of the Food and Body program, Fab, and this is called Eat Your Damn Food. And Don, I always like talking to you, Don, about all kinds of topics. And today we're here to really talk about how do you support somebody with an eating disorder, which we're not going to get all that, solved in 15 minutes, but it is such an important topic. And I know it's one that you know so intimately about. So
Yeah,
thank you for being here.
sure. Glad to be here.
Okay. Well, where I want to start is that with Fab, we do more and more work with families, right? Like we've always had some family involvement. And then what we realized is that families just want benefit from a lot more education. So we actually have a group, and you know this because you were a speaker at this group, and we really educate loved ones. So many times it's parents, sometimes it's partners. We've had grandmas, we've had siblings, we've had friends, we've had aunts. So all kinds of people can come to this group. And we're really educating the loved ones about what are the best ways to help, to support. Sometimes it's also what not to do. But a really cool thing happened on at this last family meeting. And the really cool thing that happened was there were as many like females, as many moms and loved ones that were female, and as there were dads. And that was the first time I saw that the moms and the dads balanced each other. And the other piece, it was also sometimes the dads are there, but they're sort of sitting there quietly, right? And
Yeah.
the moms are doing a lot of the talking, and the dads are like just very quiet. Sometimes when the moms aren't on and the dads are on, I get a very different dad who is engaging a lot more
Yeah.
when sometimes the moms aren't there, which has also just been interesting to note. And the other piece is some of the dads that were on were much more verbal because they've been in the process with us and with their loved one longer. So I just would like any reaction about hearing there were as many moms as dads this time. And what do you think about that? Any comment about that?
Yeah. Jen, you and I go back a long ways. And one of the first things that struck me when our daughter began her eating disorder journey was how disproportionate that balance was, right? I remember going to the National Eating Disorder Conference for the first time in 2013,
Mm,
and I was actually tasked with speaking at one of the breakout sessions, and my talk was about dads and daughters, and how to more specifically support that. But it turned out that of the 610 registrants at the conference, only two were men.
mm,
And I was completely blown away by that. So I ended up talking to a room filled with mothers and daughters principally. And when I drove away from that experience, I just immediately felt like I need to do something to sort of correct that imbalance. Because as you know, I spent maybe the better part of the next 5 or 6 years traveling around the country with a specific mission to try and get dads more involved in the process. Because I think you've hit the nail on the head, right? I mean, this is this is a collective. I think the best way to ensure the kinds of foundational changes that we're all striving to make during the recovery process is to have everybody engaged.
mm.
I think there's a real risk of sort of over pathologizing, if you will, the person who's suffering as if they're on an island somewhere and it's their battle to fight alone. And you and I appreciate the fact that, yeah, I mean, the hard work does need to be done by the individual who has the eating disorder, but that battle is best joined when that individual knows that they're fully and unconditionally supported by the people around them who A, know them the best, and B, love them the most,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah, something I have said quite often through the years and continue to say is it truly does take a village. It takes a village, and having the loved ones there is such an important part because even though, say, with teams, like our team is with that client for typically a year to go through these 5 stages. Like at some point, we're not going to be there, and you guys are going to be there. So this village is so instrumental in terms of healing. And like you said, it's maybe the whole village working on their own healing process, right? It's not just
Well,
the one person in the system.
yeah, and I think that's critically important to the individual who's sorting all of this out is to really um, see that those around them are also willing to do some work, right? Are willing, are invested, and want to know more, want to learn more, want to better understand this very complicated situation that is an eating disorder. And I think you can attest to the fact where I'm personally concerned that there are real opportunities for growth in the sort of, if you will, caretaker system
Mm-hmm.
that 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 the eating disorder journey sort of presents. And I think it's important, it's critically important to take full advantage of those opportunities for growth.
Mm-hmm. The other thing I just was sitting here thinking is how important my relationship with my father has been and how much it's grown over the years, right? And actually, my dad and I were having this very, like, one of those real heart to hearts last evening. Was We didn't plan it. I talked to my dad like every day. Sometimes it's 10 minutes like it was today and hearing about the meatloaf he cooked, right? Like, sometimes it's not that deep, but last night it was like one of those deep conversations. And I can see how much my own father has really grown because he wasn't always so like warm and fuzzy the way he has grown into being,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
I think, Don, you can really relate to that. And I happen to have a book here that you've written a lot um, about this idea of retuning the heart and connecting with this heart space. And so I think I mean, please say something about your
yeah,
book because we are
yeah,
going to maybe touch upon that and we might have you come back and talk more in depth about this book. But why it's so important to connect from the heart with the person who's really struggling with
yeah,
this eating disorder, and why the relationship with dad matters so much to people, right? I mean,
yeah,
whether it's for you, it was daughter, and
yeah,
have people with, we have males as well in the program.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, Jen, I think one of the real areas of personal growth for me as a result of our daughter's journey was this sort of um, becoming much more open-hearted. I mean, really sort of really working hard on tapping into what vulnerability looks like in particular, what empathy looks like. Um, Sort of stepping away from all of the sort of practical things that I think are, for better or for worse, are so much a part of our daily work lives, this kind of problem solving mentality that, there's an answer here and we just need to find it and we need to find it today. And I mean, it's the world that we all operate in, but
Mhm.
really I think the healing journey is a much different one, right? I mean, I think there's a longing in all children of all ages. I mean, I know 40-year-old women who I'm friends with who are still really working on trying to repair their relationship with their fathers. There's just this,
Yeah.
particularly where dads are concerned, and I'm not diminishing the mom's role in any way, but there's this unique connection, I think, between fathers and daughters in particular, and fathers and sons that
Mm,
um, really needs to be tapped into in order to sort of reach the level of healing that everyone wants. I
mm,
mean, I remember distinctly sitting in a therapist room with my daughter, and her therapist at the time had encouraged her to write a letter to me to tell me what living in her body with this eating disorder looked and felt like. And I remember her like it happened yesterday, and it was 15 years ago, her reading that letter. And my heart was breaking, but at the same time, it was this beautiful invitation, right, to just engage on at that level of vulnerability, which I think really shifted things in a lot of ways for us, you know?
mm. It's
And
so,
and I think, you and I have talked about this before. One of the critical elements of that is this expectation, right? We all have a timeline when it comes to things. There's a problem, and here's a solution, and how
mm,
quickly can we get from point A to point B instead of just really appreciating the small accomplishments along the way, and sort of recognizing those. So
mm.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, Don, you said so many things. We can go in so many directions. And I do want to say though, if people are looking for some resources, like I have sent so many families to you over the years to speak
Yeah,
with you individually. Your book, Letters to Ashley, is in my office where I see clients because it's such a beautiful book. And then your newest book, all about tuning into that heart space, is so beautiful for, anybody listening that is wanting to work on reconnecting to, I think of it as that childhood spirit, right? That
yeah.
time when we were, before the hurt had happened. Um, to all of us, right? What we go through in our lives. So, in closing, is there anything you may want to say about this beautiful piece of art? Really, just that I know you've put your heart into right
Yeah. Jenna, I feel like there's sort of a direct connection between many of the messages that I try to convey in that book and what we're talking about tonight, because I think one of the keys to the recovery process is um, finding creative ways to let your loved one know that this hasn't always been their reality.
now.
Reconnecting with the pre-eating disorder character traits that, make our loved ones the uniquely beautiful people that they are. And just trying to point them back to some of those things in little ways, just maybe it one just so many things that I did with Ashley. You mentioned the first book, which is a collection of little notes that I wrote to her along the way, just gentle kind of reminders of some, beautiful, simple memory that you may have of your loved one,
Mhm,
and as in their pre-eating disorder world,
mhm,
um, just to kind of serve as a reminder. So maybe it's a note, maybe it's a photograph, something that is likely to evoke some kind of memory that was special to them.
mhm,
Um, I think all of us, right, long for that that simpler time.
mhm,
Um, I refer to it in the book as our unworldly adorned heart. And what I mean by that is who we were before the world took hold of us,
Mm.
before the traumas that may have resulted in an eating disorder or, may have triggered an eating disorder. Or some other addictive behaviors. I mean, none of us came into the world suffering from those conditions. You know,
Totally.
things happen to us along on the road to adulthood, and they happen to all of us. And so I think, finding creative ways to just guide your child back, and maybe it's a letter. I mean, I remember writing Ashley a letter of what my memories were of the day she was born. I
Mm.
mean, it's
Yeah.
just an incredibly powerful testimony for a parent to open their heart, especially a dad in that way, to let their daughter know not only how beautiful, but how life-changingly important
Mm.
those moments were.
Oh
So,
yeah. I mean, it's my dad, my dad's like not a man of lots of words, but when he writes even two lines, they are very meaningful. And I have one of his, his little things he wrote me. It's right on like my bedside table, and it just is an important little thing, and it just reminds me of like that love and that connection. And so like you're saying, sometimes it's not even these big things, it's the
no,
like small little ways to meaningfully connect, to tell your loved one how much they matter, and to remind them in some ways of like who they really are, which is so important, right? So
yeah,
well, Don, I know you and I, we
we
do
could
not
talk
run
for a
out of
couple more
things.
hours.
We could be here for a while, but I just want to thank you. I want
Yeah,
to thank you not just for being here tonight, but just all the ways you make a difference for so many people in the world, and your mission to help people through your words, through your stories, through your vulnerability. And I know that's where your strength really lies. So thank
thank
you,
you.
Don.
Thanks. Have a good evening.